So, hello, everybody. This is the Self-Worth Talks, and I wanted to have Candi Sterling on today because as an entrepreneur, I know what I went through in terms of trying to figure out who I was, what my brand was, my niche. I didn't even really understand any of that. So, and especially in today's world, I think it's so important. So, I want to welcome you, Candi Sterling. Nice to have you here today.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you for having me. I am so excited because you're such an inspirational voice when it comes to people working on themselves and building up themselves. And I think the work that you do is so important. So thank you for having me on. I'm very excited.
You're welcome. I mean, I think it goes hand in hand, what I do and what you do. And so you are the founder of the personal brand studio, the brand studio On Her Mission.
On Her Mission, that's right.
Yeah, and I know that you've got an app that you're getting really up and running, which is going to be so exciting. Living on brand. I know the names. There's been some different names, so and that's very exciting. I want to hear all about that. I want you to tell people about all that. But before we go to like the here and now and going forward, can you tell us how you got here? Like, what was your path to being here now? Because it's so different for everyone.
Absolutely. So I'm not going to start at the very, very beginning, but I was always heavily influenced by my parents. I'm an immigrant to the United States. I was born in Jamaica in the West Indies. And so I always like to start there because, I think where we're from and where our families are from are part of who we are, and the values that we take with us and grow with are really important. And so that sort of shaped my journey moving towards, obviously adulthood. And when I graduated college, I was very idealistic. And I was always that student that was doing all the stuff you're supposed to do. You're in the honors classes and you're in all the clubs and you're really following the path, that the success path and the roadmap that was given to you. And so I did that, right? And then when I entered the workforce, and my goal and my dream, I initially wanted to be a journalist. I love storytelling. I've always loved writing. And journalism. I also studied performing arts because I thought I was captivated by storytelling from stage. And so all of these things, I really wanted to be in the media space. And so that initially was my thought going in. Set myself up I to live in New York City. I got a roommate, did all the moves. And it was 2007, 2008. And if anyone recalls, that was the Great Recession time.
Yes, and I remember that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the world shifted very quickly. The roadmap and the blueprint that I had been given suddenly didn't really apply in the same way, or it was sort of like it was like a panic, right? It was like, there's no jobs. And it was all over the media, all over the news. That rhetoric was everywhere. And oh my gosh, I graduated with a state school degree. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
But it was like, oh my gosh. So branding myself and packaging my expertise, that's what I did. And so I got started as a communications consultant, and going in, my first client actually who hired me, I ended up working in commercial real estate as the right hand of at a commercial firm in New York City, which was incredible experience because helping on marketing on such large projects was something that was completely new to me, but very exciting. And of course I was thrilled because I'm like, I was in the place I wanted to be, and I was working, and it was definitely an adventure. And then from there, it just evolved and flowed into different industries, but always really leading with the brand. Well, at that point, it was writing and communications, and then over time, added on to that expertise. Eventually, went back and realized I had a thing for information science, and I love technology, and I wanted to dig into that aspect of the branding and being in the digital space and the digital world that was just at the same time evolving, because social media was also very new. And so it's the past decade, I would say, has been, or a little bit longer than that, but it's been a time of change and shift. I think that's been incredible. So that shaped me. But it was packaging what I was good at, and then filling the
necessity too, right?
Yes,
like you had to.
I had
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
So, and then that's kind of been it. And then over time, it was doing a lot of the business training that I didn't get formally. That was like trial by fire, right? The mindset stuff,
Yeah.
the sales trainings, and seeking out communities that were talking about entrepreneurship in this way, and surrounding myself with people that were entrepreneurial and were sort of, visionary in that way. Because one of the key things I learned is you have to keep motivation really strong, especially when you're doing something where it feels like there's no clear-cut blueprint, or you're not sure if it's been done before. And so you need to have that fire, and it's hard to keep it lit on your own. So for me, that was really, I think, one of the best things, I think, was connecting with the right people.
Yeah, that's so important. It's just so interesting. I started out in New York City also, thinking I was going to do like performing and stuff, and then that all shifted, and it all is like skills that kind of add to who you are. And what you end up doing is not necessarily what you thought it was going to be, but it's related to who you are, and you get clearer as you go.
You do get so clear. And one of the things, it's like, you don't let go, you don't leave that behind, you take it with you. You take all those skills with you, and you take all of the training with you, and that ability to, whatever that is for you, you can bring that in as a skill into where you're going next. And I think that something that people have a lot of fear about change, because it's, what's that mean? Does it mean that I'm no longer this or that? And we get in our heads, and it's like, no, you have all those things still. You're just utilizing them differently, or you're that's new.
I think what happened in it was 1998, and when I graduated from college, it was a recession also. It's like we're forced to change, rather than like, oh, I think I'm just going to go a new direction. And I think that's what makes it a little difficult, but I think we have to look at those experiences as opportunities, in a way, like to take who you are and move forward. And so, and you do storytelling, you love storytelling, and that's so much branding. Can we jump into your ideas now about branding and what that's all about? I think storytelling must have something to do with it.
It absolutely does. And for me, branding, it was one of those common struggles I kept seeing over and over and over again in very different ways. And it was one of those things that I went through myself, where it's like, you thought you were going to be one thing, and then you move on to another thing, and then you're in a different industry, and then you're like, is this my industry now? Like, I've worked in the environmental industry, right? I've worked in natural foods. I've worked in, so many different spaces. And you're like, you're trying to find that identity piece. And I think a lot of people, struggle with that, especially now, because it's so visible what everybody else is doing with social media. So there's sort of like this need of, oh, I need to, what am I? And
right.
Seeing that, and also it reflects in the businesses and the companies that people had. So that it started there, but then it was like, well, how are you leading your company? And then I started to look at, well, what are the things that are attracting me to certain companies? Is it just the company brand? Or a lot of times it was me connecting with the person, or I hear somebody say something that resonated with me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to check out their company. And so that, to me, it started to be like, branding is so powerful. And myself, when people would reach out to me and say, hey, Candi, I saw you, I heard you, somebody mentioned, it was all brand related. It wasn't necessarily me going out there and doing, a sales call or that traditional path. It was a much different thing that I started to notice that was going on. And so naturally, my focus just took me there. And I said, I wanted to create a place that I never had to help with this piece, with this brand identity piece. And I want to be able to put all of the things that I've been able to take from the past 10 plus years into one place that can be really, really powerful tool for other women moving forward. So that's
that's great. I mean, you're doing this for people with all your experience and expertise that you wish that had been there for you and that you know is going to help people be more successful? You just mentioned a couple things. Brand is partly who you are. We are our brand, and then there's the company brand. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So one of the things I think that's been interesting in, the past couple of years, especially, is we're seeing the humanizing of more brands. We're seeing, first we're used to seeing brands take on brand ambassadors, or having somebody come in and be a spokesperson for that brand. And so essence, that's an expanded, that's one way of looking at it. But then if you're thinking about from the core people that are part of the company and the team, and who are leading the brand from the top, it's a lot of people today, it means something to them to be invested and buy from brands that the values match. And so I think that that's a really powerful thing. And so for me, I think that the company or the business, we bring ourselves into our work. We're in our work, and how we do our work, it's a natural part of it. So I think that as we're looking at our relationships between our business and ourselves, finding that link to say, well, I'm doing this business, or I'm offering you this because I believe XYZ, and
Yeah.
that such a powerful message to hear, because now it's not just hearing from an inanimate, like a logo or a company or
right.
person. You have a connection, you have a person. I think that connection is so key, especially when it comes to larger decisions or a long-term thing. Or if you're, I'm like, oh, think I'm going to join this membership, and well, who's leading it? I want to know who's leading it,
Right. It's so different than, I think that wasn't the thing in the past. Now we want to feel a connection. Maybe it's because there's so much less, it's so harder to connect these days, like with all everything internet. People want to be connected to the people that are running. Yeah, they want to feel aligned.
They want to feel aligned, and they want to feel there's the trust factor too, because the internet, it's a screen. It's you look through, and there's filters, and you can do whatever you want, and none of it can be real, right?
Yeah.
I mean, things that are happening in VR and virtual reality, it's insane, right? So
I know.
When you're and a lot of us were interacting digitally, it's less and less, it used to be, you'd go into the store and you'd more often and
right.
look more, you talk more, or, but a lot of services are, you can do them through like how we are doing it now. So I think that
exactly,
building that trust is key when things aren't as in person as much. And I think that that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So how do you work with people? Like, what is the process when you're trying, someone is it like that wants to have, know what their brand is, or
Absolutely.
What do you do?
So for me, I always like to look at things like we're building a foundation. But I also want to consider what's happening right now. So I always like to look at and audit what's going on right now. And let's take an overview and assessment of where you are now. Let's gather all of the pieces that are already there and see what we can work with. Because many times, it's like we actually have what we need. We just don't know where it is, or it's lost, off in space, or lost off in Google Drive.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah. So, I think it's really key, or maybe you have the more clarity than you realized. And so that's part of it. And then talking it through. I just did a really amazing private brand intensive with a new client. And it was really interesting and it was a team. And during the call, one of the team members goes to the other one, never heard you say that before. Communicate that way. And so
wow.
capturing this messaging and this information during the call, but I thought that was interesting. She's like, yeah, in 2 years, I've never heard you say what you just said so well. So, it's interesting. So that initial conversation and figuring out where you are at and what you have is to me, the ideal place to start.
Wow. So you can work with individuals and you can work with teams. That's really cool.
Yes, it is. And so, yeah, branding, it's like, I always think of it more as a practice. And for me, with On Her Mission, as a personal brand studio, is to teach those skills of brand management, because they're transferable to both business and personal. But once you have those skills and you have that training and you can look through that lens, I mean, it's a powerful thing to have, and it's a skill that you can take with you moving forward. And so for me, that is the vision, is to have that place that can really be that training ground. You know, again, that I wish I had.
So much has to do with knowing that it's okay that you don't know something, and there's people that can help you with it. Like, I don't think we don't get started in our careers with that kind of a mentality. And I think it really is, if I could go back, if I could start over again, that would be one thing I would try to do, is use other people and get more help from other people about all sorts of things like this. But I think this would be good for people who are like looking for jobs, to brand themselves in jobs, having careers. When I think of branding, a lot of times I think of like, oh, well, what color do you wear? Or what color, I don't know, like design things. Is that, what part of branding is that?
Oh, absolutely. So I always say, I used to teach this framework called ACE, and it was aesthetics, communications, experience. And that was just one framework to describe, you know, the overall brand experience. But that's part of that visual psychology and that visual identity, and that's absolutely part of it. But before you get into that as much, it's understanding what you want that to even be, you know, what do you want to visually communicate, and getting that messaging really clear. And then you can forward in doing like the fun stuff and the aesthetics and the design and work design team, and communicating. A lot of times with companies, I see this all the time, there's a gap between how they communicate what they need to the actual creators that are creating what they're going to be using in the company. So it's really, really clear in that instance to really have the tools in place to be able to speak the language that a creator would understand, or even know, hey, this is what the creator needs in terms of guidance, because the creator is going to create and then they're not, you know, no, it's not really, and then it goes back and forth, and you know, it can be very, very frustrating, and and it can waste so much time and money.
Yeah.
so much that you know, so I think that just having that communication and that clear conversation about where the brand is and what it's going is so essential, and not make the assumption that everybody knows, because everybody doesn't know unless we really spell it out clearly.
Yeah. Is that connected to the idea of having a mission statement?
Absolutely. So mission statement is 100%, I would say, a core piece of the essential piece of the core message elements. Okay. And absolutely, your mission, you know, vision, and I go through all of that, and a framework. It took a very long time to get all of the little pieces that I was supposed to be incorporating. Supposed to be. But you know, that clarity, you need to have that clarity. And for me, I spent way too many years feeling fuzzy and abstract and going in a direction that I learned from, but wasn't necessarily aligned. And so being able to get clear on that long term, that vision that you have, and your mission today to get there is so important, because now it's like you have your North Star, and now you know, okay, this is your roadmap to get there. And now you can easily say, that doesn't fit, that doesn't fit. Okay, I'll take that. And you can streamline your time so much more effectively and just feel better about it, and not have the energy drains hit you the same way.
Oh yeah, and it's like, it is, I'm sure, coaching. It sounds like coaching, an element of coaching. It's like really exciting, and it just seems like so core. Like, you know, it's not like an option really. If you want to be successful, it almost seems like a core thing that you have to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that groundwork. It's that essential groundwork. And you know, in my program I call it Entrepreneur Gal Groundwork. Do the groundwork, girl, you know. Get that done, because it's so tempting to want to dive into all the other things that come later, all the marketing campaigns, and you know, all of that other fun stuff, and being out there, and it's great, but get those pieces in place first, because you'll have a use your time, with content creation, and visibility campaigns and
Mhm.
attract when you get
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. And the other thing you said earlier was that it changes. It's not like a one and done.
Yeah,
What
it
did you
evolves.
say? It's more of a practice, or,
It's practice, so brand management is definitely, in the way that I have experienced it, it's a practice, because it's not something that, you're always going to go back, you're always going to refresh. Every year we make New Year's goals, resolutions, whatever people want to call them. Some people say, I'm not calling them resolutions, I'm calling them whatever they are. We go
yeah.
back and we look at, okay, how are we going to move forward this year or this month? And that's very common. And branding is the same way. And sometimes, you may run something and say, I don't know, let me go back and reassess that, and take that
Mhm.
as a learning
Mhm.
experience.
Yeah, that's
And yeah, so it's fun. So it
yeah.
doesn't have to be, oh, we made a choice. And
Yeah.
now we,
You're not stuck with it forever.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, if there was any kind of a takeaway for people, what would you want people to know about this whole thing, branding?
Focus on running your own race, because no journey is the same.
Mm.
I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I always, and,
I love that.
and to learn that lesson of that blueprint may not work for you, and that's okay. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you, or you did something terrible, or whatever. It just means that your path is different, and your blueprint,
Mhm.
your roadmap that you're taking, and we're making it as we go. And that's the other thing. We're not, I didn't know what my roadmap to get here was until I'm here, and I'm like, I can go
Right.
back and look. So right now, where I'm going to be in 10 years, we're building that roadmap now. And then we can go back and say, okay, here was the blueprint. But knowing that, and
Mhm.
you're building, and that is just, it's your own journey. And there's a lot of things and knowledge that you can use from so many different experts, and take it, absolutely take it. But there's going to be sometimes things that you need to tweak, and that's fine. That's
Mhm.
absolutely, we all have different circumstances, and that's a natural
Yeah.
part.
Yeah. So everybody's journey is different, and we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to everyone else. Right. You mentioned Blueprint, and I just want to say that we're doing the Powerhouse Partners Presents Blueprint Intensive on March 23rd, and you're going to be working with people on branding, which is going to be so amazing. Can you tell us, and that's on Eventbrite, but can you just tell us how else people can find you?
Absolutely. So feel free to connect on Instagram at On Her Mission. Please do. OnHerMission.com is the studio website. And then as you go there, you can also connect with me, Candi Sterling, at Candi Sterling. So I'm very easy to find, but and I hope that everybody can also connect at the Abundance Blueprint, because that is going to be amazing. And I'm excited. We have a phenomenal lineup of experts, and it's going to be so good. I'm so excited. I can't wait to learn from all of you lovely ladies. It's going to be,
Yeah, that's going to be great. And it's like you said, I think it's going to be helping people hone in on who they are and
yeah.
coming up with their blueprint, their roadmap for the next year, just for the next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Candi, so much for coming on, and we'll maybe have you come back again because there's so much more we could talk about.
I could talk to you all day, of course. Thank you, Suzanne. I
You're
really
welcome. All right, take care. All right, bye-bye.